Here's the deal. I played every Halo game on PC in the span of like 4 weeks. It all started almost a year ago when I downloaded the Master Chief Collection on Steam because it was marketed as the entire Halo saga and it was like $60 and I was like, yeah, why not? Let's see what the fuss is all about. Did I really miss my childhood? Was it withheld from me because my parents wouldn't let me play rated M games? All of that and more will be revealed in my Halo Tell-All. I spent 81 hours on the Master Chief Collection, 16 on Halo Infinite, 13 on Halo Wars, for a total of 110 hours across 8 games. In this review, I will cover each of the games, what I liked, disliked, how hard I thought each one was, and what I've heard about playing the game on Legendary. After all, this whole video is for the purpose of picking out a game to suffer through on the hardest difficulty. First up is Halo Combat Evolved. Combat Evolved was made in 2001 and is about a crippled, hobgoblin-looking mishmash of polygons named Mr. Schiff, who embarks on a journey of genocide of an entire alien race that's animated much better than he is. It's brutal, it's slow, and it took me 3 tries to even get past the second level. I called Chief a cripple because he walks like he's the player in Slender, slow as balls. There's obviously something wrong with his legs because I read somewhere on Reddit that Spartans can run up to 60 miles an hour. Either that source was lying, or the Chief is only using 1% of his power in this game, which makes me hate him all the more. Anyway, you crawl your way through these massive levels of very similar blank-looking textures, very little to no background music, and the most lukewarm gunplay in the world. Seriously, you have dozens of bullets in a single battle rifle magazine, and it takes almost every single one to kill a single elite on normal mode. The battle rifle is so bad. It sprays like a drunk trucker taking a leak and hits like a face full of feathers. It is awful. The only guns that actually pack a punch are the Covenant weapons, and they look like something out of an early 2000s bad sci-fi movie. Oh, ha ha ha, I get it. So the pistol is broken and also overpowered, but if you use the pistol with any sort of regularity, you find yourself starving for bullets like the Donner Party was starving for human flesh. The moral of the story is, the guns are unsatisfying and slow, and the only ones worth using, or fun to use, are few and far between. Memes aside, there's a lot to like about Halo 1. It is classic. As much as I clown on the visuals, it doesn't look terrible for 2001. This iteration of Master Chief is my favorite of any in the series. He looks simple, the maps are repetitive, but there's nuance to almost every one. There are secrets, shortcuts, and once you get a hang of the combat, it's actually pretty satisfying. The pistol can one-shot any enemy with a headshot, and creeping through the library level, budgeting your ammo, aiming right, taking on Horde to Flood is actually really cool. Speaking of the Flood, this game is half FPS, half horror game pretending to be FPS. After the Flood is introduced, it gets very dark and very horror-esque. The game gets a lot easier the more you play, and the ending sequences are some of the best in the series. I've heard that this game on Legendary is an epic struggle, but also by far the most rewarding. That's because of the enemy AI. The enemy AI is actually incredibly good, and while they're relentless and brutal, they are also predictable and can be exploited. The classic example is, you can try to stick an elite with a plasma grenade, which would instantly kill them, but they're fast and hard to stick. You could alternatively stick a grunt with a grenade, which is easy, and their AI has them panic and run back to the elites, which kills more enemies. All in all, Halo 1 was fun. It gets better in the late game, and I wouldn't dread playing this one on Legendary, but it lacks a lot of the tools and quality of life, like regenerating health, of pretty much every other Halo game. Halo 2 starts off really hot. You're driving in a burnout city with new guns, detailed new environments, and all sorts of fancy toys. The game is about the Polygon Man, who we heard about before, learning to shape his body to slightly resemble a human as he continues his killing crusade across the galaxy. This game was made in 2004, 3 years after the original, and heavily marketed the dual-wielding feature, which admittedly was pretty cool. You can pick up 2 of any kind of small gun, and it changed your reticule to be a hybrid of those 2 guns. Neat. Your health also regenerates with your shields, and it regenerates faster. Very neat. There's also a battle rifle that is actually accurate and does a ton of damage. It's an actual working gun. Wow, look at that. Super neat. The not so super neat part is the addition of brutes, which is the gorilla-looking dudes, that take a metric buttload of ammo to take down on normal mode and go berserk at low health and can one-shot you on normal mode. I like the new variety of weapons, I like the music a lot more, and I like the story quite a lot actually. I don't like the brutes, the sometimes overwhelming odds you're placed under, and some of the Arbiter missions. The Arbiter missions are levels where you play as the alien, which was a cool touch. And you go up against literal hordes of Flood all by yourself with Covenant weapons. The Covenant weapons look terrible, and the levels are super long, so I'm not a big fan of these parts. So I've heard Halo 2 is the hardest Halo to beat on Legendary, and I totally believe it. The Jackal snipers that can one-tap you from across the map, the bullet sponge brutes, the levels that drop you in ridiculous scenarios with no cover and no warning, the vehicle levels that have planes pepper you with tiny damage just outside your cannon range, the list goes on. People hate this game on Legendary, and I totally understand why. I would only choose to play this on Legendary if I hated myself and my time. Halo 3 was my most anticipated mainline game, for the express reason that the best seasons of Red vs. Blue were shot in the Halo 3 engine. It looks really clean. It was made in 2007, only 3 years after Halo 2, but it looks so much better. You also now have access to both battle rifles, the tight 3-round burst one and the big chunky automatic one. They fixed the automatic one so it's not total doggy anymore. It's actually quite fun to use. You also have armor abilities like a deployable shield, a healing zone, and an energy drain for your enemies. There's a new kind of grenade, and the driving is actually really responsive, making the vehicle levels not all that painful like they used to be. The game is colorful and faster than the previous games, which in my mind means more fun. The guns are better than ever, the environments are dynamic, useful, and unique. No more slogging through endless hallways that all look the same. There is an actual art direction, and I love it. I like this game a lot, and I have very little negative to say about it. There's one level where you go through this awful cesspit of Flood, and there are too many enemies to fight with the weapons you have, and you kind of run through it, but it's a maze, and there's no distinct landmarkers, and the enemies are strong, and I really don't like that level. Everything else, finale included, is a banger, and I really don't have a lot to say that it's bad. I genuinely enjoyed this one more than any other so far. As for Legendary runs, I've heard this game is one of the easier to do, since there's ammo everywhere and tons of grenades and tools and power-ups. I wouldn't mind playing this game on Legendary, I'm just afraid that it would piss me off, and my current great opinion of the game would be tainted by a Legendary run. Or maybe I would develop an even greater appreciation. I'm not sure.
Well done, Chief. I'm sending in a few pelicans.
Halo ODST is definitely a weird one. It came out in 2009, 2 years after Halo 3, and was supposed to be a DLC, but grew so much that they just made it its own game. I went into this being super excited for a story that was about something else other than Master Chief, and with characters that had more personality than the dirt my dogs piss on. Unfortunately, it didn't quite live up to my hopes, and what I got instead was a cast with personality, just not very good character design or writing.
You know the music. Time to dance.
They did that thing that Star Wars or any soldier army movie is super susceptible of doing, which is making all the soldiers look exactly the same. save like a stripe of color on their armor to tell them apart. The game also had Nathan Fillion voice act your commander, and that was cool, but then they shoehorned in like a romance subplot that had nothing to do with the overall conflict. It didn't create any new narrative points, and it really didn't have any impact on the story. The only reason it was there is for the first time in any Halo game there was a female human character of consequence, and they felt a need to make her a romantic interest for their big ticket voice actor, Nathan. It felt forced and awkward, and I felt it detracted from the narrative. The gameplay was nearly identical to Halo 3, the big difference being you're not a Spartan, so you can't run as fast, take as many hits, or jump as high. I thought this was a cool gimmick until I jumped onto a tank and smashed it to pieces with my bare hands, which is a Spartan mechanic that I guess just isn't that extraordinary. Anyway, there was one new gun, a silenced SMG, and it worked very well, alerting the entire enemy army the second I fired a single shot. The game is also very short and sweet, with some horror elements early on, like a flashlight levels like in Halo Combat Evolved. It also has a neat audio log scavenger hunt in the open hub city, but by the end of the game it turns into an all-out shooter, which I saw that one coming. I've heard this game is similar to Halo 3 in terms of difficulty on Legendary mode. Some fights are cheesable, and there's certainly no lack of ammunition. All in all, I did like this game a lot, but not as much as Halo 3. Mostly because it's a story-centric game with very poor writing. I wouldn't mind playing it again, but some levels were grueling, even on normal mode. Halo Reach is for sure the most divisive game in the franchise. All the purist Halo soy boys hate it because it changes up the Halo norm. You can sprint, you have a jetpack, and a lot of the guns change. However, most multicellular organisms like myself realize more game mechanics doesn't immediately equate to something being bad, and a franchise is allowed to add new things into their game 9 years after the first release. In Halo Reach, you play as an unnamed Spartan fighting alongside other Spartans who never appeared until now, so the story is fresh-ish, and at least original to this series. You're on a world called Reach, and there's lots of nice children there who make you cookies. Covenant come to sell their own cookies, and that simply won't do. After a slight disagreement, the Covenant earn the right to sell their products on Reach, and the humans leave. I've only played one Call of Duty game, and played a lot like Halo Reach. I'm not sure if that says a lot about Halo Reach and COD's similar target demographic, or if it's impossible to make an FPS game that has an original story. Either way, it had decently wide deviation from the standard Halo formula. You get to design your own character, your character has emotions and voice lines, and the good guys don't always win. There's a lot of vehicle combat in Halo Reach. An entire level is dedicated to aerial stuff, half a level is spent in outer space, wow, and you jump in and out of tanks and pumas semi-regularly throughout the entire game. At least that's what it felt like to me. I liked Halo Reach when I played it. The environments allowed you multiple different ways of attacking enemies. The guns all had their uses. There wasn't any guns that felt totally, awful. And the missions were pretty varied. One mission is about attacking and destroying an enemy base. Another is about defending a small group of humans against the Covenant. Another is about just escaping from a city. I felt like very rarely did the game feel repetitive, like so many of the previous installments did. I didn't really like how the power armor choices weren't really a choice. You had sprinting, jetpacks, armor lock, and a few more, but sprinting was pretty much the best in every scenario. You could use it offensively, defensively, and it had a super short cooldown. The story kind of sucked, but the game looked great, the guns felt great, and as an experience, not bad. I've heard this game is incredibly challenging on Legendary, but that you also have enough tools at your disposal to get through pretty much anything. Do with that what you will. So, for those unaware, the game development company Bungie had made all the Halo games up until now. Starting with Halo 4, a game company called 343 took over. They went on to make Halo 4, 5, Halo Wars 2, and Infinite. Bungie went on to make Destiny and Destiny 2, super popular MMO looter shooters that play exactly like Halo Reach. Halo 4 came out in 2012, so we're nearing modernity. What's hysterical though is that Halo 4 looks and plays a lot better than most modern games, and it came out a literal decade ago. I can't believe graphics have plateaued so much that a 10-year-old game looks better than the vast majority of games today. It also plays better. Halo purists, say what you will, Halo 4 ain't bad. plot is, at the end of Halo 3, Mr. Chef falls into a cooler of ice and is asleep until his blue gamer girlfriend wakes him up 150 years later. His armor changed shape while he was asleep because the magic of Zanzibar came and redesigned it. Your mission is to go to the alien planet of Juju Beans and make as many friends as possible. And by make as many friends as possible, I obviously mean commit genocide. Again. And it's not just the aliens this time, but the robot people too. I liked Halo 4 because it was faster, it had a bunch of cool new guns, some old classic guns, neat looking enemies, and sparkly explosions. You could also sprint permanently, which was neat. Otherwise, it was pretty much Halo doing Halo things. There's not a whole lot I didn't like. Some of the levels had cheesy enemy placement, no cover, or enemy encounters that were entirely too difficult for what you had equipped. Oftentimes you ran out of ammo because the guns shoot 3 bullets per shot and every enemy is super tanky, but the power of normal mode trumps all. Lack of ammunition is the main concern I've heard about Legendary runs. Otherwise, people say it's not that bad. I wouldn't mind playing this game on Legendary. I'm not a very good shot, and a lot of ammo conservation is about hitting certain points on like larger enemies to save ammo, which I'm not very good at. At least if I play this on Legendary, my hundreds of deaths will look visually appealing. Halo Infinite is the brand new game that came out 2 months ago, December 2021. I think it's great, but kind of a mixed bag. Unlike other Halo games, it's open world and you kind of enter instance levels between securing objectives, capturing bases, and whatnot. The story is a lot different than Halo 4 and 5. There's a time skip in the beginning, 2,000 years into the future, where Mr. Chef becomes Senior Chief. Seriously, the voice actor is like 71 years old. This time, you're fighting Gorilla Grodd, who runs a YouTube channel about mouth breathing ASMR. Your mission is to prove that your Twitch streamer no-scope 360 multiplayer skills are superior to his subscriber base. As far as gameplay goes, it's easily the cleanest of all the Halos. Every weapon feels crisp and responsive and deadly. There are tons of new guns, and almost every old gun makes a reappearance, and everything about the fighting is just super satisfying. The bit that I don't like is how the open world can be equally cheesy and impossibly difficult. Some fights you just hop in a vehicle and shoot the baddies from super far away. Other times, the quick save catches you on a cliff, surrounded by enemies, where you're not supposed to be, and you die 15 times before you can Spider-Man swing your way out of there. Which totally didn't happen to me. This one level, you're supposed to investigate a few buildings, and they're very far apart, but instead of driving or walking, I just hijacked an enemy plane and flew there. It cuts out hours of gameplay, and honestly, I didn't mind. There are some enemies that are massive bullet sponges. Since damage in this game is very, very available, there's spawnable explosive canisters, a grapple hook, refillable ammo crates, and many, many other ways of killing things. They throw some serious BS your way. I am not a fan of that. Besides that, the story is better than the last few installments, and the guns and gameplay are the best they've ever been. As for Legendary runs, I have no clue. Very few people have even played the game on Legendary, much less ranked it against the rest of the series. One bit to note is that you can't replay levels, so I can't just take my current character and go back and do all the levels in a harder mode. I have to start all over again. And everything would be super hard in the open world, not just the enclosed levels. The idea of doing this is pretty awful, but if that's what I have to do, I'll do it. I just won't be happy about it. Halo Wars is the last game I'll talk about here. It's a spin-off of the main franchise and an RTS game. You build bases, you strategize, hold territory, and blow up the enemy base. I started playing this game because I had a strong nostalgia kick about Warcraft 3, and it was available on Steam, so why not? The story is about the UNSC Forward Unto Dawn discovering an alien planet that houses a new forward technology. No one really cares. It's cool to train Spartans and upgrade their gear, to send out columns of tanks and infantry to die on the fields of battle. You can't really compare it to any of the other Halo games, and I'm not going to. I had fun playing it. There's a pretty steep learning curve involved. Easy is ridiculously easy. Normal is barely doable. Pretty standard RTS stuff, honestly. On Legendary, I can only imagine the excruciating pain this game would put me through. I think the big difference here is that in normal Halo games on Legendary, you have checkpoints and deaths don't set you back too much, maybe a couple of minutes at most. Halo Wars missions are like 20 to 30 minutes long, so if you lose a fight late in the mission, it sends you back like a half hour every time you die. and I am not sure I am ready for that kind of commitment. That's all the Halo games I've played. Which one should I play on Legendary? Let me know so I can hurry up and get to suffering. Also, let me know if you actually like the editing, and maybe I'll do an edited playthrough of the Legendary run of whatever game I choose.